April 12, 1945. The outskirts of London. A grey morning mist clings to the barbed wire fences of a British interrogation center. The truck doors slam open. Inside, a dozen German women blink into the pale light. Luftwaffe Helferinnen, the Air Force auxiliaries who'd once guided bombers and tracked Allied raids across Europe. Their uniforms are crumpled, their faces drawn from sleepless nights on the road. The war is ending, but they don't know that yet. To them, this might be the beginning of something worse. A British corporal calls them out one by one. The women step down in silence, boots crunching on gravel, hands trembling at their sides. Every rumor they'd been told echoes in their minds, that the British humiliated their prisoners, that women were stripped and mocked, that Allied soldiers were savages who showed no mercy. Inside the reception building, a clock ticks steadily above the doorway. The air smells faintly of disinfectant and damp wool. A young German woman named Erika Myler, barely 20, keeps her gaze on the floor. She hears the shuffle of papers, the clipped tone of English officers giving instructions. Then a new voice, calm, female, and oddly gentle. Please follow me. They're led down a corridor, past closed doors marked medical examination. Erika exchanges nervous glances with the others. No one speaks. The tension is suffocating. The older women whisper prayers under their breath. When the door opens, she braces for the worst. But instead of rough voices and shouting, she finds a softly lit room. Privacy screens divide the space. A woman in a British Auxiliary Territorial Service uniform, an ATS officer, greets her with a nod. A female doctor stands nearby, adjusting her glasses. On a small table, folded neatly, lie clean robes. Erika blinks in confusion. No soldiers, no mockery, just order and professionalism. You can undress behind the screen, the ATS officer says evenly. You'll have privacy. Take your time. The young German hesitates. Her heart hammers in her chest. She half expects the trap to spring. A laugh, a camera, a punishment. But none comes. Only the quiet hum of the heater, the soft rustle of fabric, and the murmur of polite English voices. She steps behind the screen, trembling, unsure whether to trust what she's seeing. And yet, for the first time since capture, she senses something strange, not hostility, but dignity. Still, one question burns in her mind. Why are they being treated this way? Erika's fingers tremble as she unbuttons her Luftwaffe jacket, the same one she'd worn when the British stormed their outpost in Schleswig. The cloth still smells faintly of smoke and rain. She folds it neatly, almost ceremonially, as if clinging to the last piece of her old life. Behind the privacy screen, a clean robe hangs from a hook. The fabric is soft, freshly laundered. It's the last thing she expected. She slips it over her shoulders, her mind whirling with disbelief. When she steps out, the female doctor gestures toward a small examination table. Please, sit, she says in careful German. This won't take long. The doctor checks her eyes, her pulse, her temperature. Each movement is clinical, practiced, not a hint of cruelty. An ATS nurse takes notes beside her posture precise, her tone neutral. The examination feels no different than a routine checkup at a civilian clinic except for the guards outside, their boots echoing faintly in the corridor. One of the other prisoners, a tall blonde named Latte, whispers in shaky English, Why are you doing this? The nurse looks up. Regulations, she replies simply. We examine all prisoners for disease and injuries. Nothing more. The Germans exchange stunned glances. This wasn't how they'd been told the enemy behaved. For years, Nazi propaganda had painted the British as monstrous destroyers of Dresden, tormentors of civilians. And yet, here they were being treated with decency. For the British officers, it was a matter of principle. These were still prisoners. Yes, but they were also women. Most of the ATS staff had seen the same war-torn Europe, the same shattered cities. The violence had to stop somewhere, and perhaps it stopped here. When the examination ends, Erika expects to be shouted at, perhaps thrown into a cell. Instead, the ATS officer offers her a robe and gestures toward a small adjoining room. There's tea, she says quietly, and biscuits. You'll wait there until you're called. Tea. Biscuits. The words almost sound absurd. Erica steps into the waiting room. The other German auxiliaries are already there, seated in a line of chairs. Steam curls from a teapot on a wooden tray. Cups clink gently. For a moment, the war feels 1,000 miles away. Then one of the women begins to cry softly, silently, as if realizing that the world she'd believed in had just shattered in the most unexpected way. Because in this room, surrounded by the enemy, they are not being punished. They are being treated like human beings. But soon, the interrogations will begin, and that's when they'll discover the true purpose of this place. Later that afternoon, the corridor hums with a subdued tension. The women sit quietly, teacups cradled in their hands. The sound of distant footsteps echoes every few minutes, another prisoner being summoned. The clock ticks. One by one, names are called in crisp English. Fräulein Mahler. This way, please. Erica rises, smoothing her robe as if it were still her Luftwaffe uniform. The ATS officer gestures politely, leading her through a narrow hallway lined with closed doors. At the end, a sign reads, Interview Room 4. Inside, two men sit at a plain wooden table, both in British intelligence uniforms. One is middle-aged with sharp, intelligent eyes behind rimmed glasses. The other, younger, scribbling notes with military precision. A small Union Jack hangs on the wall, its colors faded by cigarette smoke. Erica's pulse quickens. She expects hostility, accusation. Interrogation lights the scenes from the propaganda films she'd been shown back in Germany. Instead, the senior officer stands and gestures for her to sit. Fräulein Mahler. He begins, his tone courteous. Thank you for cooperating. This is just routine. We want to understand your service, that's all. She nods, wary. The first few questions are simple: where she served, what duties she performed. She answers mechanically, eyes fixed on her hands. When he asks if she ever witnessed Allied prisoners being mistreated, she hesitates. The officer catches it instantly but doesn't press. He simply offers her another cup of tea. It's disarming, infuriatingly so. He doesn't shout, doesn't accuse. He just listens. Minutes stretch into an hour. The younger officer occasionally glances up, studying her reactions. When she speaks of the bombing raids on Hamburg, the nights she watched the sky burn red, her voice falters. She expects mockery. Instead, the senior officer murmurs, terrible business. No one should have had to see that. Something inside her shifts. The enemy, the so-called barbarian, is expressing sympathy. Genuine sympathy. By the time the interview ends, Erica feels dizzy. The officer rises, nods politely, and says, You'll be escorted back shortly. Thank you for your honesty. No shouting, no threats. Just calm civility. As she steps into the corridor, she meets Latte's eyes, the tall blonde who had gone before her. Latte's expression says it all. Disbelief, confusion, and something deeper. A dawning realization that perhaps they had been lied to for years, because the propaganda had promised monsters. But what they'd found here were human beings. And yet, as night falls over the camp, the Germans begin whispering. If the British are so kind, then why the secrecy? Why the endless interviews? Why the meticulous questions about radar posts and airfields? Perhaps kindness, too, can be a weapon. Night settles over the interrogation center. Rain taps gently against the windows, blurring the faint glow of lamps along the outer fence. Inside the women's quarters, the Luftwaffe auxiliaries huddle in silence, wrapped in wool blankets provided by their captors. Somewhere down the corridor, a gramophone plays a faint tune, the soft hum of an English waltz drifting through the stillness. Erica lies awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replays the day like a dream she can't quite believe. The calm voices, the tea, the gentleness. It all contradicts everything she had been taught. In training, their instructors had warned them that surrender meant humiliation. They had been told the British loathed them, that they would be paraded through the streets, stripped, shamed, punished for the bombings over London. And yet here, in the very heart of Britain, the opposite had happened. The next morning, the women are assembled once again. The atmosphere feels lighter. Hesitant smiles flicker where fear once lived. The same ATS officer who'd overseen their examinations the day before greets them with a nod. "Breakfast will be served shortly," she says. "Then you'll be transported to a holding facility. Until then, please remain here." When the trays arrive, the women stare in disbelief. Warm porridge, bread, jam, even butter. "Why would they do this?" whispers one of the Germans, her spoon hovering midair. Erica doesn't answer. She simply watches the British officer moving quietly between tables, ensuring everyone is fed. The officer's composure carries no hint of superiority, only discipline. And that's when it truly hits them. The enemy they'd imagined, the fire-breathing, vengeful British, doesn't exist. The real Britain is sitting right in front of them, pouring tea with steady hands. After breakfast, Erica and Latte find themselves standing near the window, watching the drizzle soak into the gravel yard. "They treat us like guests," Latte murmurs, voice unsteady. "I don't understand it." Erica shakes her head slowly. Maybe we were wrong." Latte frowns. "Wrong about what?" "About everything." The words hang in the air like smoke. Outside, a British officer strolls past, umbrella tucked under his arm. He glances up, meets their eyes through the glass, and offers a brief, polite smile. Reflexively, the women step back, not from fear, but from confusion. Because in that fleeting exchange, they sense the quiet truth that will haunt them for years to come. The enemy they'd been taught to hate had chosen mercy instead of revenge. And that realization, far more than capture or interrogation, is what finally breaks their pride. Still, as they prepare for transport to the next camp, whispers circulate about other prisoners, other facilities where things are not so gentle. The women can't help but wonder, was this kindness genuine, or part of a grander British strategy to win hearts and minds before the peace? The line between compassion and calculation is blurring. And for the first time, Erica realizes that wars don't always end when the guns go silent. April 14th, 1945. Dawn creeps pale and cold over the camp's rooftops. Asterisk. A whistle blows. Boots shuffle on gravel. The Luftwaffe auxiliaries stand in formation, their few belongings packed neatly in small canvas bags. A British sergeant reads from a clipboard, his breath visible in the morning chill. Today, they are to be transferred to a longer-term holding camp north of London, one step closer to the uncertain future that awaits them. The trucks are already idling by the gate, engines growling softly in the fog. But before departure, an ATS officer approaches the group. It's the same one who oversaw their examinations. Her uniform immaculate, her tone composed. "You'll be well treated where you're going," she says firmly. "You will have food, medical care, and correspondence privileges. War or not, you are still women deserving of dignity." Pause follows. No one moves. Then Latte, the tall blonde who once trembled with suspicion, steps forward and blurts, "Why? Why are you kind to us?" The question cuts through the cold air like a blade. The officer studies her, then replies simply, "Because cruelty solves nothing. We've seen enough of that." It's not the answer they expect, but perhaps the only one that matters. As the women climb into the trucks, Erica looks back toward the low brick building that had terrified them only 2 days earlier. The privacy screens, the soft light, the porcelain teacups, fragments of civility amid the wreckage of war. She realizes now that this was never about comfort. It was about contrast. The British had not needed to shout or threaten to win the psychological battle. They'd let kindness do the work. For the first time, Erica begins to question not just her government's lies, but the very machinery of hate that had fueled them. She remembers her commander's final words before capture: "Show no weakness. The enemy has none." But here, weakness, empathy, even has proven stronger than any uniform or ideology. As the trucks roll out of the compound, the city fades behind them. London's skyline emerges briefly through the mist, distant, battered, but still standing. The women stare at it in silence. The enemy's capital. And yet, not monstrous, not savage, just human. In the back of the truck, someone whispers, almost to herself, "If they had treated our people like this in the East, Maybe the war would have ended sooner. Erica doesn't answer. She just looks down at her hands, no longer trembling, and thinks of the British doctor's calm eyes, the tea, the warmth. She understands now that wars are not just fought with bullets and bombs. They're fought with perceptions, stories, beliefs. And on that cold April morning, in the quiet after defeat, she realizes something few soldiers ever do. That sometimes, the most powerful victory is not domination but decency.